Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the garage on a Friday morning for a chat with Andy the Gabby Cabby. And this is one of those chats which is probably one of the most important ones considering the subject matter. And that, of course, is that of digital ID. This is the thumbnail for this live stream, Stop Starmer's Digital ID. And you can see a very concerned me with a rather belligerent looking Keir Starmer in the background. Now, anybody that's followed this story knows that digital ID is not a fresh idea. This has been something that's been discussed in the halls of Westminster for a great number of years. In fact, it goes back to the time of Tony Blair. And from the little bit of research I did, it got shelved because of the public backlash. But now we've come to the time of Starmer, and we are once again talking about it. For contrast, I'm completely against it for reasons I'm sure all of you are completely against it. Now, I want to show you something now, and then we're going to have a look at it at the end of this live stream. So stay tuned all the way through. This is a petition that's been set up, which is obviously against digital IDs. Do not introduce digital ID cards. And you can see, as we're talking, the numbers are going up. Now, at the moment, that's 741,100. Well, before I even have finished a sentence, it's gone up a couple. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to put that across the bottom. Hopefully, it won't distract people too much. It's very important that if you haven't done so already, you get this signed. Now, for the people that go, petitions don't work, I'll talk about petitions shortly because there's something very important to point out with those as well that you need to understand. The other thing I will do is leave a link in the actual comments, which I've just put there now, and people need to sign that petition. Very, very important. Now, let's have a look at the announcement or what came out yesterday. This is due to be announced, I think, within the next hour. And this was taken off of one of the websites. The UK Prime Minister is expected to announce plans for a UK-wide digital ID scheme today. The initiative, which would be mandatory for adults in the UK, would enable digital checks on people's right to live and work in the country. That's very important. Hold that thought. Keir Starmer believes this would help tackle illegal working, saying digital ID is an enormous opportunity to make our borders more secure. But critics have already spoken out ahead of his announcement, accusing the government of trespassing of people's privacy and saying the scheme would be ineffective against illegal migration. Now, here's the thing. There's another interview that I saw Starmer do, and something he said was about these things, mobile phones. He said over the last 20 years, the debate has changed because we're more used to dealing with these things. We're more used to having digital whatever on our mobile phones. Do you see what's been happening? Where, as a society, we've become more and more reliant on these, it's like mission creep. So they'll use that as a justification. We all pay for things with these. We all look up things with these. Our NHS records are on these. This is what has led us to this point, and we have walked straight into it because it will all be digital based. They're calling it a Brit card, I think. Have a think about the uses of your mobile phone, what you rely on it for, even your laptop, your tablet, and then you will see that we've walked into this utter catastrophe. Now, this is a picture of the kind of thing or the kind of information that you will see. This is the form it will take. And the text hasn't populated there, but it was basically the employment record, the tax situation, the residency situation, all there on that actual file. Now, can you imagine that sheer amount of information being held about you on a central database like that? Now, for those that think it's a great idea, consider this. I heard Yvette Cooper say the other day along the lines of, this is scalable. You know, you can build it up. You can start with one thing and build it up. I saw a video by the Black Belt barrister where he walked around China. I forget how old it is, but it's on his channel. And he said that he could see how convenient the whole digital ID thing was. Now, okay, you pay for everything with a thing. You can identify yourself and blah, 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 blah. But when you give the state that amount of control, they can take things away anytime they like. That's what people have to understand. They can take things away anytime they like. If you say anything incorrectly, if you do anything out of line, if you forget to pay a bill, if you do other things which are considered non persona non grata, they can remove your freedoms. They can remove your ability to function. That's where this potentially can go. And if we allow it, what else is there to say? Now let's talk about the petition again. As you can see here, it's gone up some more, 746,538. Now, to all of those that say petitions are a waste of time, there's something I want to show you now, which is very, very important. And it also doubles up to kill another argument. I saw a thing in a WhatsApp group that I belong to, which says we don't need digital ID. We need a digital Bill of Rights. Bullshit. We don't need either. We have a Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights 1688. The English Bill of Rights 1688 to be precise. That gives us all the rights we need. This is here, right? It's very important you understand something. I've scrolled down to the part of the actual legislation where I want to highlight. And you've got a couple of things here. Freedom of speech and debates of proceedings in Parliament ought not to be impeached or questioned in any court or place out of Parliament. That's our right to stand up and say, we're not happy with this. Right to petition. That it is the right of the subjects to petition the King, and all commitments and prosecutions for such petitioning are illegal. So what that basically means is we have the right of petition. We have the right to air a grievance, and any attempt to silence that grievance is illegal. Now, this is all a list of your rights. The English Bill of Rights, including frequent parliaments, the right to a jury, the right to avoid excessive bail, the right of freedom of speech, the right of freedom of election, the right to bear arms, the right to petition, the right to not to have to pay money unlawfully to a government. Those are all your rights right there in the English Bill of Rights, conveniently ignored. Why? But the important thing is the right to petition, which brings us back to this, which has gone up again while we've been talking. You see, the process is very clear. If you have a problem, you petition the government. If the government fobs you off or gives you a lame excuse, you petition the monarch. If the monarch fobs you off, gives you an excuse, then you are no longer being represented. What's the alternative? Remember the poll tax? That's where this is heading. Very much so. Now, a word from a couple of MPs. Rupert Lowe's been kicking off. Parliament must be recalled to debate digital ID. For Starmer to release this enormously vile change with no parliamentary oversight is outrageous. Cancel recess, cancel the conferences, recall Parliament. And he's gone further than that. He's raised a motion in Parliament, and here it is here, that this House expresses grave concern at the government's plans to introduce a compulsory UK-wide digital ID scheme. Notes that such a system would represent an unprecedented expansion of state surveillance over law-abiding citizens, granting government departments and potentially private contractors access to a centralised database of personal data. Believes that compulsory digital ID will do little to deter illegal working or illegal immigration, since those breaking immigration law will simply avoid compliance, while the law-abiding majority will face greater intrusion, bureaucratic hassle, and risk of data breaches. Warns that such a scheme would create a papers, please culture and a two-tier society. We're all already living in one of those, where those without smartphones or digital access are unfairly penalised, and therefore calls on the government to abandon plans for a mandatory digital ID scheme and instead focus on practical enforcement of existing immigration and employment laws, mainly mass deportations. It's very important to understand that when you want to shuffle something in, an unpopular concept, we will call it, with the people, what you do, you create a problem that your concept will solve. Look what's been happening with the influx of people coming into the country over all this amount of time. Now, all of a sudden, we're presented with this scheme that apparently will solve it. Again, bullshit. And I'm calling it for what it is. Nigel Farage is next on the list. Listen to what he has to say. And I'm in agreement.
So the Prime Minister says we must have digital ID. That's the way we'll stop illegal immigration. Well, think about it. Germany has ID cards, strict ID and checks. It's made no difference at all in Germany, and nor will it here. All that digital ID will be is a means of controlling the population, of telling us what we can and can't do, of fining the innocent. And didn't we see it all when we had the pandemic, when you had to have vaccine ID to travel, to do various things? Did that stop the COVID pandemic spreading? Did it hell? All it did was put cost and inconvenience on everybody else. I also worry about massive data banks being held by the government, being hacked by foreign governments, by private companies, by criminals. I do not see a single benefit to the government having digital ID other than them controlling what we do, what we spend, and where we go. And we, in Reform, are wholly opposed to it in every single way.
There you go. You know, despite what people say about Nigel Farage, he's right. I couldn't argue with a single thing he just said. Not a thing. Commonsensical, isn't it? Now, I don't know if anybody's aware, but when this live stream finishes, have a look at what happened in Vietnam. The people were given a choice, comply or lose it. And it's very well documented that millions of people lost access to their bank accounts. You look at Klaus Schwab, who's no longer in the WEF, but you look at the speeches that he gave and you look at that whole model. There is a particular country out there, China, sorry, got that stuck in my throat, who represent a model of citizenry, compliance, and everything else that they quite like, and they wouldn't mind rolling that out everywhere else. They have digital ID. So you'll see other countries trying to roll this thing out as well as us. As Nigel said, there's digital ID in other countries who still have the problem with migration. So that's not the reason. It's purely and utterly control. Control, control, control. Let's have another check of this petition. That's flying up. 754,853. There's a couple of quite good sites or reasonably good articles that I've seen this morning that I want to share with you. Before I do, can I ask that you please hit the like button on this, subscribe to the channel, share me on your social media, particularly this. This is vitally important, vitally important we raise awareness of this all over the show. Now, let's make this a bit bigger. There we go. The pros and cons of digital IDs, and do we need them? Well, if you think we've got a driving license, we've got a passport, we've got a birth certificate, we've got a national insurance number, we can prove without a shadow of a doubt who we are everywhere. Now, what does this do? You can see there again an example of what this will look like. They even tried it with the kids. You know, if you want to buy a pint, show your ID. So fans of digital ID cards argue that they will speed the UK into a digital future by giving everyone a way to prove who they are. Well, I've just explained I can do that very easily. What's confusing about this argument, we can do it already. We have physical ID cards in the forms of passports, driving licenses. We also have an extensive system of digital identification and a whole range of laws that require you to prove your identity, sometimes multiple times a week. If you're employed, someone recently, even for a few days, you'll know that you have to check their right to work documents, either physically or digitally. It's the same if you open a bank account, hire a solicitor, file a tax return, vote in an election, or apply to get government services like universal credit. These days, even accessing, Tug TV, we'll call it, online, you have to prove your identity, or in that case, prove your age. So there's a lot of things that have happened in our society that are a precursor to having this in, getting us used to it. The trouble from a government point of view is that none of these systems are joined together, which makes it possible to slip through the gaps. Despite all checks, for instance, illegal immigrants regularly get access to bank accounts. Well, they have it all handed to them as soon as they get here. The Home Office is meant to share its data with banks and building societies to stop this happening, but the information is often incomplete or just plain wrong. That's why the system had to be paused for 4 years after the Windrush scandal came to light. So what that article is basically saying, that's reinforcing the idea that we don't need this stuff because we already have it. Quite a novel idea, that, isn't it? We don't need this stuff because we already have it. Remember what Rupert Lowe said? You know, this wasn't in their manifesto. There's been no debate, no referendum, no nothing. Hello, my name is Keir Starmer. You're having this, whether you like it or not. Well, I'm sorry, Prime Minister, we don't like it. Now, let's have a look at this one. This is a very good overview of, well, the situation in its entirety. So every working adult in Britain will require a government-issued digital ID card under a dystopian plan set to be announced by Keir Starmer. I'm not going to call him Sir Keir Starmer. The idea of a mandatory identification system has long been advocated by Labour as a way to tackle illegal migration. Now, again, remember, you create a problem so you can present a solution, which isn't the solution. That is what's going on here, and I hope people understand that. But the proposal is fiercely opposed by civil rights campaigners who warn it will erode civil liberties and turn the UK into a papers please society. That's exactly what it will do. Meanwhile, polls show a majority of the public do not trust ministers to keep their personal data safe from cyber criminals. Detailed proposals for what has been dubbed as a Brit card, I'm not British, I'm English, thank you very much, could be announced by the Prime Minister as early as tomorrow. Well, it's actually today. Under the scheme, anyone starting a new job or renting a property would be required to show their digital ID on an app so it can be automatically checked against a central database. Current employees and renters have the option of showing a number of different forms of physical ID, but there are fears these are too easy to fake. There is also little to stop unscrupulous employers claiming they've made a check when they have not. However, critics have dismissed the plan as a reheated version of Tony Blair's failed scheme, which was axed amid concerns over privacy and soaring costs. That's exactly what this is. So Keir's proposals will be subject to a consultation and expected to require legislation. The UK is one of the few countries in Europe without an ID system. Now, this is a better representation here of, the kind of information that will be contained here. And this is the Prime Minister as an example. You can see name, date of birth, address, view HMRC records, voter registration, car, appointment. So you can see just from that screen there the amount of information that they want to cram into this thing. It's complete overreach by a government that literally wants to control your every single move. Now, remember what Keir Starmer himself said is that the debate has shifted over the last 20 years because of our reliance on these things, as I said earlier on. We need to sign petitions. We need to raise awareness. We need to talk. Those that are not engaged need to become engaged. It all needs to happen, and very quickly. Otherwise, this will be forced on everybody. Now, just to answer the European question, they keep mentioning Europe. I mean, in my opinion, we never really left the European Union. I'm sure, people will agree or disagree with my theory, but that's exactly what I believe. That's exactly what I feel. Now, one very important thing to understand, and I will keep ramming this home, this is a representation of England. And you can see there's no counties, there's no shires, it's regions. 9 regions with Greater London at the core. This is a European EU construct. This is what they want to do to England, because we have a system of law in England and by proxy Wales that will shoot down all of this before it even begins. Now, if regionalisation and therefore rejoining the EU is allowed to occur, they can then overlay 2 things over us: a constitution that isn't ours and a system of law that doesn't belong. And then they can do digital ID, digital currency, and all of the other things that they wish to impose on the populace unimpeded. This is very important that everybody starts talking about England, everybody starts talking about Wales, everybody starts talking about Scotland, Northern Ireland, and hell, even Southern Ireland. All the while this is allowed to happen, this picture here, we are in deep, deep trouble. Now, what you have to remember, and again, it's very important you understand, we have these rights. These are bits of paper, these are laws that were created long before any of us were ever thought of, and they did things to protect your rights, to protect the rights of the state, to make sure that the laws, see, you can see Bill of Rights, 1688, it's right there, and it's all available in the public domain. And they make sure that the system of government, our way of doing things, is protected forever. There's a supremacy clause in the Bill of Rights as well, which I will show you. And it's actually headed Supremacy. There you go. I do swear that I do from my heart detest and abhor as ambiguous and heretical this damnable doctrine and position that princes excommunicated or deprived by the Pope or any authority of the See of Rome may be deposed or murdered by the subjects or any other whatsoever. And I do declare that no, this is the important bit, I do declare that no foreign prince, person, prelate, state or potentate have or ought to have any jurisdiction, power, superiority, preeminence, or authority ecclesiastical or spiritual within this realm, so help me God. So that in our Bill of Rights, that very line there gives utter supremacy to English law, our law. So the very idea of Ted Heath signing all this over in 1972 or wherever it was an act of treason. And anything that has happened ever since then is an act of treason. So this is where you get everything rolling in, like digital IDs, digital bills of rights. We've got it all. It's being ignored, and it can't be any longer. Listen to that, people. It can't be any longer. Now, on the 28th of September, which is on Sunday, I'm going to be in Essex, and I'm going to be attending a meeting of the English Constitution Society. If anyone is in Essex, it's actually in Leigh-on-Sea, and it's a talk about the Constitution, what your rights are, and how you can protect yourself using those rights that you have, that you don't know anything about. It's very, very important. Now, I'm going to go through your comments, and then at the end, we'll have a check of the petition again, see how it's doing. Before I do, can I ask that you please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this everywhere. People need to be talking about this stuff very, very urgently. Very urgently. Now, as started Billy No Mates, digital ID is the glue that will bond the electronic chains of slavery to the government. You will own nothing and be happy or else. That's exactly where it's going. You understand totally, you know, what the issue is. It's all about state control. It has to be stopped. He is trying to turn us into North Korea. Haven't got a name low enough for him, but the Bible has a number. Thank you, Yvonne. Again, somebody that is awake to the consequences of this. John Shaw, no to digital ID. Starmer can stick it where the sun doesn't shine. Jaguar got hacked. It's not safe. That's a valid point as well, John. You know, when you rely on digital systems in their entirety, they're not infallible. Chris Asher, well said. This government's a complete joke. Absolutely. And what you've got to remember as well, anything that you see or hear in the news is a distraction to move your mind and your attention away from what's really going on behind closed doors. Digital ID, why need if the government retains all the illegals? Absolutely, John. The migration problem is a created problem to justify the introduction of this. You can see that's the only reasoning they give for it. The yellow areas are where we already have Gwen Gamble. Absolutely. When you look at these petitions as well, more inevitably than not, you will see London, the square mile particularly, never gets anything. You know, they never sign anything. It's almost like London is lost. We need to take it back. Peter Martin, if we go for ID cards, great for the government. They get what they've wanted for years. If we say no, then the immigration problem suddenly is the fault not of the government, but of the people. I think more people are waking up, Peter. I really believe, and I have to believe that more people are waking up. Problem, reaction, solution. That is exactly what this is. That is exactly what this is. No two ways about that. Neil, it wasn't in their crap manifesto or mandated. Ill thought out, and as most government ideas, it will be a disaster. Most of them couldn't organise a piss up in a brewery. That's absolutely right. Never seen a real day's work in the real world in all of their life, and they couldn't organise anything. It's going to be awful. Jan dances, we're not China. streamer has told us he's not for us. But yeah, that's right. There was that footage, and he had no qualms about saying that, didn't he? I remember that very well. Acquiesce 100. Tony Blair never imagined one ordinary man could still ruin people's lives while he lives in comfort. It's pathetic. Have you heard on the news today that they're talking about him running a transitional administration in Gaza, of all places? Oh, God. Tamsin, this is not about illegal invasion. They could stop this happening. They don't want to. It's control of us. Spot on. Another person that sees it for what it is. Jimmy Mack, you will comply like everyone did during. You won't get service in shops or restaurants without the gym. That's very important, Jimmy. Well, you know, they're selling this as just an ID card, but what you have to understand is that they will tie literally everything into this ID card. You will not be able to fart without having to show your ID card. That's how serious this situation is. I have identification to prove who I am, which is something I need as an English citizen. I'm English, not British. I have everything I need. I don't need to flash the damn thing every time I buy a paper or a packet of bog roll from the local Tesco's. No. It ain't happening. All is in one and land 68. Time Starmer faced the people and stopped swanning around the world for attention. Yeah, at the end of the day, he is an elected politician, the same as the rest of them. They have a job to do, and they're not doing it. Mackenzie, Electron, I have a Nokia flip phone as well. They're getting rid of landlines. I heard that, absolutely. And, you know, this is the other thing. If they go for digital ID, what about people without access to phones which enable you to use it all? They say, oh, there'll be physical versions, but no, it's all about control and subjugation. Yvonne, Andy, Moz, I have Ben, was supposed to be in Newcastle to launch Advance UK, but the hotel where it was held pulled out because of Newcastle Council. Threats to staff and damage to the hotel. That's right, Yvonne. I spoke to a member of Advance yesterday afternoon, and I was told, and I have it on good authority, that it is going ahead as planned and it's not going to be stopped. They found an alternative venue in Newcastle. When I finish this live stream, I'm going to have a look and find out where that is, and I'll bring that news to you. I know Paul Thorpe's quite on it as well. Mick Porter, immigrants are the new enforcements to implement all of this. That's doing the rounds as well. That is doing the rounds as well. England, sightseeing. The police don't deal with common law. They deal state laws as effect. Yeah, there's a difference between the law that should be abided by and the law that currently is. You know, you have to look into it. If you turn around and showed or mentioned the English Bill of Rights to a police officer nowadays, they wouldn't have a clue what you were talking about, and they'd probably nick you for something. You know, all of this stuff isn't being taught to police officers. I've had conversations with retired police officers who have all told me that all of this was required reading when they learned the trade, so to speak, when they learned how to be a police officer. Not anymore. And it's because of the direction they want to push everything. Check out to yellow areas of the petition map. What do these areas have in common? All right, let's have a look at that, shall we? Let's bring that up on the screen. Okay, do not introduce. Again, you can see it's flying. If that's not over 1 million people by the end of, well, in the next few hours, I'll be amazed. I will be absolutely amazed. Yeah, you can see this quite clearly. And again, you can see the concentration of all this, all the areas. And look at London. The density is hardly anything compared with everywhere else. It really is very telling indeed. You know, what do you say to that? What do you say to that? And of course, what do the yellow areas have in common? What do they have in common? And what I've got to try and do now is, that's it, got it, right. Last comment, what we got here. The last time socialists had ID cards, it didn't end well. The National Socialist Workers' Party of Germany marched. Yeah, absolutely. If you look at that as a historical comparison, it's horrific where this is going. It really is horrific. England sightseeing. Paul Richards, a Labour and cooperative candidate who was run for Police and Crime Commissioner and is an author on policing, is a former chair and current executive committee member of the Fabians. That is another thing as well. And I'm going to show this just for anybody that isn't aware. And it's very important you understand what is happening. Let me just find this. Every time the Fabians are mentioned, which is what we are subject to at the moment, we need to ram this home. And again, I talk about English law. Here is a passage out of Halsbury's Laws of England, and it's a section about the Crown and the Executive. Civil servants may be subjected to a purge procedure and a positive vetting procedure. The purge procedure is designed to prevent persons with communist or fascist associations being employed on work, the nature of which is vital to the security of the state. So what that basically means is if anyone's in power, in a position where they can control what we say, what we do, what we have anything to do with at all, has any fascist or communist tendencies about them, they can be gotten rid of. Simples. And that is English law, which is currently being ignored. I draw your attention again to the regionalisation of England. This is all happening, folks. One thing I want to say in closing, it's very important, very, very important that, I had a chat with a friend of mine the other day who said he's bored of politics. This is what these people in power are relying on, people being bored of politics, because if you are, then they will do anything they want to you. They will do absolutely anything they want to you. And in the end, we will lose this great country of ours. People need to be engaged. People need to be talking. People need to be listening. People need to be, they need to raise awareness with everyone around them, brothers, sisters, uncles, nephews, fathers, mothers. The list goes on and on and on. It's, it's really something. I want to show a post which brings this home as well. I'll just bring this up. This is very important. Now, this is my friend, Preston Journalist. If you haven't done so already, please consider subscribing to his channel. This one here, the cretins in government achieved only 34% of a very low election turnout. They have no right to impose digital IDs. You have, everything you need already. Starmer is desperate for a story to knock everything else off the front pages. Now, the very important thing there is 34% of a very low election turnout. Inevitably, 40% are missing. So 34% of 60% of the electorate is sweet FA. And they're trying to enforce this on the populace on the basis of a very small majority, where when you look at the actual figures, horrifying. And it needs to stop. It needs to end. In fact, our whole system of government is in such a state, it needs reprogramming. The hard drive needs formatting if we're going to get digital. Now, let's take one last look at this. And you can see it's still flying up. 779,000. 303. Now, when I put that on, probably about an hour before I was going to come on live, it was 764,000. So you can see how quick that is flying. That will go over 1 million signatures within the next few hours. I guarantee it. Absolutely guarantee it. Remember what I said. Remember what I said about the English Bill of Rights. We have the right to petition the government. They have to listen. They have to act. If they don't, you petition the monarch. They have to listen. They have to act. If neither do, then I dread the alternative. Remember, sign the petition. The link's flashing across the bottom of the screen there. I put it in the chat as well. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you, everybody, for interacting. And thank you, everybody, for your time and, supporting this channel. Please talk to everybody around you. Make them aware of this. Make them aware of the sheer audacity of it and the fact it needs to be somehow put a stop to. It's one of the most important things of our time. It really is. I'm old enough to remember what happened in the 90s, beginning of the 90s, when they tried to introduce a poll tax. It wasn't a pretty picture. Do we really want that again? You tell me. Anyway, thanks for listening, and hopefully I'll be along a little bit later with some more stuff. Toodaloo.